Hey guys, welcome to the Sunshine Coast. This is going to be our home for the next 10 days or so. We're about an hour outside of Brisbane, and as you've probably seen from our socials, we have been on a bit of an adventure for the last 10-11 days so far, and it's been pretty great.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy. I think as soon as we found out that the World Cup was being held down here in Australia and New Zealand, we knew we would have to explore, because you can't come here and not explore. There's also so many different parts to it. Every like even in Australia, like every state is different. It has its own unique culture, unique history, unique beauty. So whether it's from the natural beauty to the kind of the historical parts of the journey to, I don't know, even just the food and the drink being different, we've had to explore, I think, and take it all in. So that would be our first travel tip, is definitely to come here and to explore. Christchurch is a beautiful city. It's still regenerating itself from the massive earthquake that happened in 2011. So it is still pretty much a work in progress. I think I was saying to Rach as we travelled in, I was there in 2009 and I just literally could not remember any of the city. And then I realised when we went to the Quake City, which is a museum that tells you about the earthquake, that 90% of the buildings have been flattened. So different landscape to when I was here last, and but so interesting to see how they're rebuilding, how they've learned from the earthquake. So we did a tram tour in one of the old city trams that took us on a whistle-stop tour around the city. The tram driver gave us lots of little nuggets of information about the earthquake and how they're rebuilding, and then we popped into Quake City as well to learn about how things are changing. There's lots of street art, lots of culture. It definitely feels like it's a city on the up, and they're learning so much from that experience of the earthquake.
Yeah, and then we hired a car, hopped in the car and went on a 5-hour drive to Wanaka on what was probably the best road trip I've ever done. It's so beautiful. We got really lucky with the weather. The rain cleared, the sun came out, and we had the Southern Alps down along our right hand side from which to drive, which were so beautiful. It's quite distracting when you're driving actually, because you just want to look at everything, but very helpfully they do have little pull off sections where you can have lookout stops every so often, and I would recommend pulling in. We hit 2 lakes on the way. We went to Lake Tekapo and Lake Pukaki, blue skies for both of them. We were very, very lucky. It's so beautiful. Lake Pukaki, the sun was starting to set, so it was pretty magical. And then we went through Linda's Pass. A lot of Lord of the Rings stuff was filmed there, so if you're a fan of that, you should definitely check it out. But it does look like a movie set. It doesn't feel real. The sun was setting, everything was turning pink, and we pulled off into one of the stops there, and you could hear a pin drop. It was very, very magical. And then of course we finally got to Wanaka. It was dark by then, so we couldn't quite appreciate the beauty yet, but the road trip is definitely worth doing.
I think the one thing I would say is driving in New Zealand and Australia is really easy. It's on the same side of the road as the road as home. Makes everything very simple and easy, so don't be at all worried or nervous about getting in the car.
Except for the indicator.
Yeah.
Your indicators and window wipers are on opposite sides, and we had great fun trying to turn corners while wiping our windows, so that got quite frustrating after a couple of hours.
So Wanaka, I did my skydive there when I was here last, and literally falling out of a plane over that lake I see it in my memory. So I'm so glad you finally got to see it. We stayed there.
I preferred looking at the lake from the ground, personally.
Not falling out of the air.
No.
Anyway, we didn't fall out of the air this time. I've been banned from that kind of activity. So we stayed feet very firmly on the ground. It's beautiful. There's lots of walks you could do. We walked up the river, so away from the lake into the sort of the inland a little bit. Lots of hikes you can do as well around the mountains over there. So you can also go horse riding and trailing and stuff like that. So lots to do. We went for a lovely run. Lovely run? I've changed. I'm a changed woman.
Yeah, I've never heard you say that before.
Running is never lovely, but anyway.
If you're gonna have a nice run, that's the place to do it.
Around Lake Wanaka. So it was beautiful, and even when it's cold, I think it was something like 3 or 4 degrees when we went running. But when you stop in the sun, it's proper like direct sunlight, so it gives you a nice little heat.
We sat out and had a coffee, we had blankets on, but we were in the sun. It just did not feel as cold as it was. And I say we kept our feet firmly on the ground. We did have a lovely Airbnb that overlooked the lake, and it was one of the most beautiful things. Where did we go next? We got in the car again and we drove to Queenstown, a little bit up through the mountains, so got a bit snowy, some very windy roads. We stopped in Arrowtown on the way, which is an old mining town, and is very
proper country, isn't it?
Yeah, like we didn't really know anything about it, and I said to Sophie, like, this proper feels like a mining town. It still had that look about it. It's retained a lot of the old buildings. Great place to go wine tasting as well. And then that's only just outside Queenstown. Drove into Queenstown, very much a ski resort. It was right as the ski season was starting, so lots of people there. That was really cool, really nice little town, lots going on, lots of nice food places, great craft beer tasting, wine tasting, and of course we went skiing, which is really easy to do because they hire everything out. You can get your saddle pads, your jacket, your skis, helmet, everything, and you can get a day pass, and it is well worth doing because skiing on the other side of the world was a pretty special experience.
Yeah, I think we said to each other that we didn't expect our first time skiing since 2018. Thank you, football. Because it's always during the winter season, so we can never go, was going to be in Queenstown, and to be able to do that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also got stopped by sheep.
We did have a classic New Zealand traffic jam. Where were we driving to? Glenorchy, and just a whole heap of sheep came up the road, and they have like a sheep car that warns you with flashing lights that there's sheep coming. So that was pretty particular, I expected something like that in New Zealand. Then we got back on a plane, we went back to Australia, back to Sydney. We weren't done yet. Where did we go next?
We went to Uluru, which is just magical, and I'm so glad you got to see it because it's off the beaten track in the sense that it's literally in the centre of Australia, and it's so different to anywhere else I think I've ever been, and probably you've ever been before. And it's a great way of connecting with the history of the kind of Aboriginals and the First Nations, and trying to learn about that kind of culture and understanding how they interact with the land and the earth and all of that, and the stories that came before us, and all of the kind of history behind that land and how they used it.
And why it's so important and sacred.
Yeah, so we did a tour around Uluru, so Big Rock, and we learned all about the history and the caves and how they educated the young girls and boys. And we got to learn about one of the children's stories because they don't tell tourists the elder stories, so we got to learn a bit about their creation story and how the rock was formed and how they took over the rock. Lots of snakes involved in that one. But yeah, and then we got to have sunset by Uluru, and even though you can't see the sunset behind the rock, it's the other side of you, but the way that the rock changes colours so frequently and so differently, it's literally you look up 1 minute it's one colour and the next minute it's a different colour, so it's a very, very special place, and one I'm happy to be to again.
Yeah, it's a once in a lifetime experience. I kind of likened it to being in a ship in the middle of the ocean when you can't see any land. That's what it's like. The closest big town is Alice Springs, and that's like 450 kilometres away. So it was a very, very unique experience. And then we got on a plane again. We flew to Brisbane, and we're now about an hour outside Brisbane because this is where it all starts. This is kind of the start of our next chapter of this trip. We've got England-based further up the coast, we've got Ireland based down in Brisbane, so there's going to be media days and various activities happening before the tournament all kicks off, and on the 16th of July in the evening we head down to Sydney and we get ourselves ready for the first match, which will be Ireland against Australia, so it's going to be pretty special.
It's all coming around so quick.
It's all happening now, and we will of course be taking you on all of the journeys with us. So we hope you enjoyed chapter 1, and we'll kick off chapter 2 next.